It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. Let me check my headphones up here. This is a very important segment here. We've talked a lot about angel moms before, but I don't think I've actually interviewed. I think we interviewed an angel dad, Steve Ronnebeck, a couple of weeks ago on the program. But here we have in studio, we have an angel mom. We actually have three really special guests. We have former Senator Linda Collins is with us. We have angel mom Katherine Hall.
Hi,
is
good
with
morning.
us, and then we have David Gutierrez.
Morning, Paul.
David, how are you, sir?
Good.
Really glad that you guys are with us. So Linda, I know you're really familiar with these stories here. So if I miss anything and you want to bring something out, you got to make sure you tell me. Okay.
Okay, glad to do so.
Okay. So let's start with what happened. Let's start with Katherine. Tell us the story, because I know you're an angel mom and your daughter's no longer with us.
Yes, it was November 6th of 2016. Haley was the passenger on the back of a scooter with David when a man named Sergio Rodriguez, going 70 miles an hour in a 35, hit the scooter from behind. Haley had gone up onto the hood and was there for, I believe it was 235 feet when she came off of the hood and landed in the street. David and the scooter were trapped underneath for over 2,000 feet. After the truck had struck the scooter, it never slowed down. He never slowed down. He never stopped.
Wow, that's a great. I have a picture here. Let's cut back to this, Joe. If we can see, this is the photo with the scooter underneath this pickup truck. David, let's go to David. You were driving the scooter.
Yes.
What can you tell us about what
Well,
happened?
I suffer from post-retrograde amnesia. I'm not too sure of what I remember. I just mainly get sensations every now and then from PTSD. But I was underneath the scooter, and I was underneath and pinned between the, one side of me, one side of my legs were pinned between the undercarriage of the truck, and the other side was between the road and the scooter. And I was just dragged about close to half a mile.
And he just didn't show any sign of stopping. He didn't stop at all.
No, it didn't.
And you lost both of your legs in this. You're in a wheelchair right now.
Yes.
Wow, it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing that this is something that is so preventable. And I want to talk about that later. But I want to get more of this insight. So what actually happened, David? Do you remember what happened after after the car stopped, after the truck stopped?
I don't really remember anything. I think I may have suffered from a concussion and everything, but from the people that had found me or whatever, they said, that I was just screaming out for help, saying I need help with my legs. And I was just I came unlodged in front of these apartments, at the entrance of these apartments, while he went to the back of the apartments and tried to park and hide the vehicle.
Yeah, they said the sparks were so bad that that's why he had pulled in to hide the vehicle, is because it was 7 o'clock at night. It was dark. The time had just changed a week prior, but thankfully he pulled in, otherwise David probably wouldn't have survived. But when he did pull in, David came dislodged at that point in the driveway. The man hid the vehicle, and from what we can tell, had to have walked past David at some point to get away.
Yeah, and so he walked away, and then
He didn't call for help.
Didn't call for help. And then when was it that you found out that this guy was here in the country illegally?
I had asked repeatedly in the beginning, and it was probably 5 or 6 months into this before I was told that yes, he was illegal.
5 or 6 months into it.
Well, they didn't find him in the beginning for 2 days. His picture, it was election day, November 2016, and I turned on the TV, and his face was up on the TV along with the election results at the bottom of the screen. It was that day that they actually did get him in to the police department.
And where is this? Where's he now? I mean, was he eventually convicted of this?
Yes. When he did show up at the police department, he had an attorney with him. He was not questioned, but he was given his rights and booked in and was released an hour and 45 minutes later.
Wow, an hour and 45 minutes later.
Yes.
Paul,
one of the things I would say is that's one of the concerns that we have in Arkansas, and we brought to light in the legislatures, in the judiciary, is that this man fled the scene. And why wouldn't he be a flight risk? And so why was he ever allowed to leave the facility? It's very concerning. I mean, you've already got a strike against you. You're here illegally. And then this family, these two people here and their families are just can't believe this. I mean, that's not the way justice should be. They should have kept someone that is a flight risk, and he is a flight risk. He already fled the scene.
And my daughter survived for 6 hours after the accident, but 2 days later, it had been all over the news that she had passed away. I was with her when she passed, and I'd gotten a phone call informing me that they had him there at the police department. And then an hour and 45 minutes later, I got the call that he had just been released. And
my God.
I was heartbroken. I was angry. We hadn't even had a funeral yet for my daughter, and he's free. And I was, regardless of what his situation was or where he was from, the point being my daughter is gone. At this point, we didn't know if David was going to make it or not, and they let him go.
So it could potentially be, a double manslaughter, double homicide, or what, it could, and you didn't even know at that point.
No, and from what we were being told, the only thing he was charged with was leaving the scene of an accident.
Oh my goodness, really?
It took weeks, and I finally went to the press, and that's when things started to change. I got in touch with my state representative and spoke with him about the whole case.
Who was he?
Greg Letting.
Okay.
And he looked into it a little bit, and we subsequently had maybe 3 news conferences before they put stronger charges on him. First being David, which would be the assault. And it took until December of the next year before we got a second-degree murder charge.
What? That doesn't make any sense at all. I don't understand why it was. It sounds to me like it was like pulling teeth.
It was for her. It was like pulling teeth. They had to stay at it. They couldn't quit. Had it not been for the families demanding and continuation of trying to get something done, I don't know that this man would have been charged. I mean, he's only serving 18 months as it is for the life of her child and David's disability now for the rest of his life. Although he's a fine young man, I've enjoyed my ride with him.
David, I should do what I say. Going, what you've been through, you do have an incredible spirit about you of perseverance, and I think that alone is a testament to just your character and who you are. Because I look at what you've gone through, and it takes a very strong person to be where you are today.
Yes, thank you. And to me, it's more of a strong testament to the power that God's given me and stuff. Because
Amen.
First and foremost, He's helped shape my character and stuff. And that I was raised in the church and being a Christian and stuff. And to me, He's given me the strength more than anything and more than anybody.
Your last name is Gutierrez.
Yes.
What's your family's immigration history?
My mom, she used to live in Mexico and stuff and everything, and I come from California and everything, and I was born there, born in 1996, and she came over here, and she went the whole legal process and stuff, became a legal permanent citizen of this country and stuff, and she's we're all glad that we were blessed with the opportunity to make something, and for her to provide a stable home for us and a better life for us here in America, and we're proud to be Americans.
Absolutely. And so but see, that is a novel. That's another reason why this is so bitter in a way, because here you have a family that came here the legal way, and yet somebody who's here illegally. I mean, this was a 35-mile-an-hour zone, and is the estimate that the truck was moving 70 miles an hour? Is that right?
Yes. We actually, I fought to bring the reconstructionist up because at first the reports were that he was not even speeding, and that wasn't true. The damage that was done to my daughter, her head and her body, and there's no way it was 35.
Wow.
So I had fought to bring up a specialist here from Little Rock that came up and did a reconstruction of the accident site and calculated 70 miles an hour. And I've heard a lot through being an angel mom. This was a car accident. This was, why are you fighting against immigration when this was just a car accident? But that's not the case. I understand car accidents happen, but when my daughter was on the hood of this man's truck for over 200 feet and he never even slowed down, and he made that conscious decision to veer over into the other lane hoping to knock her off, and he did. At that point he made that choice, and as far as I was concerned, it was murder at that point. There's a lot more to each story that I think that makes it a little bit more than what it sounds like in the beginning.
And he walked past a man screaming for help, and he chose to leave him there. And for the people of Arkansas, when you try to figure out, well, how do you arrest illegals, and there's a big difference in just immigration and an illegal alien that's here. They come here and they don't necessarily want to be Americans. They don't do it right. But when you can walk past someone and only get 18 months that's screaming for help and ignore that help, that call for help, he could have allowed him to just die. And so what is the punishment? We've found through the legislature that, Paul, they don't seem to get the same amount of time that an American gets when they do a crime. And that's just not right. Yeah. It's just not right at all.
Talk about that. You say only 18 months. So elaborate on that.
His actual sentence came down to, and it was 17 months later that we finally got into court. There was a plea deal done. In December, the charges had been upgraded to second-degree murder, first-degree assault, and leaving the scene, which they were going after 56 years. A plea deal was done. He received manslaughter at 10 years, second-degree battery on David for 5 years, and 2 years for leaving the scene of an accident, which came out to 17 years. He went to jail, went to prison. Well, at sentencing, they gave him another 2 weeks to get his affairs in order, is what we were told, and let him go home for another 2 weeks. Before sentencing, he married a U.S. citizen. So this point, when we go to sentencing, he's now a permanent legal resident because of the marriage. We go to sentencing, the judge gave him 2 more weeks to go home, and then it was the end of April, I believe, that he finally went to jail. His parole date, I think it was the 25th of April, and his parole date is already February 7th, 2021, which with his good time and parole time, that's going to be moved up even sooner. So he will probably be released in 2020 next year.
Think about that, Paul. This man gets from the judge, he's allowed to go home for 2 weeks to get his affairs in order. These people didn't have 2 weeks. One was killed and one was left at, the hand of God only. He didn't even make a call to give him some relief. So he gets to go out and go back home for 2 weeks before he goes to jail.
Well, you missed it. He was already home for 17 months.
Right. I knew that part. You stated that. But he gets 2 weeks after the sentencing to go home.
This is a photo of Katherine. This is your daughter. This is her November 17th, 2014. Let's see if we can get this. And here is a photo of her November 6, 2016 in the hospital. So I just wanted people to kind of know that. see this photo right here. This is, I mean, this is a cost of a policy in this country, right? I mean, I don't want to simplify it down to that because I know it's much, but this is a cost of the
It is, and
policy.
it's happening every single day in this country, and these are preventable deaths, and that's the worst part of it, is knowing that this was preventable.
Wow. We're talking with Katherine Hall. She's an angel mom. Linda Collins, former state senator, as well as David Gutierrez. We're going to take a break. You guys can stick with us because I think we've got to talk about this some more. So, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be back here in just a moment. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We're here with angel mom Katherine Hall, former state senator Linda Collins, and David Gutierrez. This is, I was talking to them during the break because we want to get this information out to the people. I mean, that's what this is about. People need to know what you guys have been through. So, real quick, let's talk about insurance. Okay,
right.
tell us.
Well, maybe I'll let David handle that.
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
And the liability insurance in the state of Arkansas for you to have the minimum liability is $25,000. And to start off with, I was only through the insurance settlement alone given $8,333.33 for losing my legs. A third of it went to settling with the state for my medical bills, and a third of it went to my lawyers that represented me, and a third went to me, which ended up being that sum amount.
That's incredible.
That's a major problem we see in the state is that they don't have to follow the law. They're here legally, first of all, so they have nothing to lose. And so then whenever there's a situation like this, it's just heartbreaking what we've heard, the stories, even when Senator Stubblefield did his bill. For years we've talked about in the legislature this issue of no compliance on insurance. It's horrible. You and I have to have that.
Right.
There's punishment,
Exactly.
major punishment for that we're going to have.
Yeah.
But in this case, these people have the punishment. They can't even do medical bills. They can't even pay their medical bills.
Haley's bills were $48,000, and the death on the insurance is supposed to be $50,000, but they were underinsured on this vehicle, and we had been told that a lot of these smaller companies will do that, and they get their insurance card and nobody ever checks to see that the amounts are at the legal limits, and they've got the card. Haley's part of the insurance was $25,000, but like I said, her medical bills were $48,000.
That's incredible. So that's a whole nother aspect of this about illegals in this country that no one ever talks about. And that's wild. Tell me about the judge, Katherine. You guys were not even allowed to ask the judge for restitution? That's
correct. We had asked repeatedly, not just, that we wanted some money to come from this. Haley had a baby that is going to be without her mother for the rest of her life.
We didn't mention that either. And that was in the photo of your daughter Haley as a mother, and now so we have a child without a mother.
Yes, and we asked for restitution, and we were told that they don't ask for restitution in Washington County, that all fines will go to the courts. I had brought up the fact that, well, if there's restitution ordered, I'm sure we'll never see a penny of it to begin with, but if he is sent back to Mexico, he cannot even apply to come back over here until that amount is paid. And we were told no, they don't ask for it, and they would not ask for it. Subsequently, he had a $250 fine and a $30 fine for his DNA test.
And that is it.
That's it.
And that's incredible. This has got to stop. That's why we're doing
It's
this.
Stop.
We're going to talk more about what you guys are doing in Washington and in the state with legislation when we come back with Angel Mom Katherine Hall, David Gutierrez, and former state senator Linda Collins. Back in a minute. Folks, if you're just joining us, we are with former state senator Linda Collins, Angel Mom Katherine Hall, and David Gutierrez. Katherine lost her daughter, Haley. She was on a scooter with David, and they were run over by a car doing 70 in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. David lost his legs as a result of the incident. The man was an illegal immigrant who fled the scene and is now serving 18 months. Do I have that right?
Well, it's somewhere going to be between 18 months and 2 years. Yes.
Okay, well.
And Paul, I always make a statement. It's not an immigrant, and you're illegally here as an illegal alien.
Yeah.
His
you're
parents
right.
came here to be an American, and I call that.
Well, the situation now
An immigrant
is,
technically is someone it has legal
different
right to be
definition.
there.
That's
An
right.
alien is actually
Well,
you're
this-
right. See, I mean,
yeah.
I'm fall victim to how they try to change the
That's right.
wording and gradually, and now you can't say the word illegal. It's supposed to be a bad word.
well, actually now he is a legal permanent resident because he was allowed to marry before sentencing. And that's an issue that we're having. And I just got a call from Voice a few days ago stating that they're not quite sure when he goes to his immigration hearing. At that point, they'll decide if it's going to be 5 or 10 years till he can apply to come back. And because he is married and has a child here now, the chances are he'll be able to come back into the country.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the work that you guys are trying to do legislatively, try to correct this program, because it seems to me like, and David, feel free to speak to this as well as you, Catherine and Linda.
Okay.
What it seems to me, with the whole court proceedings and everything that went on, that you guys were treated like you had done something wrong.
We were. When we went into court, we weren't able to ask for anything. I mean, at one point I had asked, when we were supposed to go to trial, I said, can you give my family and I a separate room, because when you call a recess or in between, we don't want to be sitting there with the man that killed my child. And we were told, oh no, we don't do that. And I said, well, we're not going to sit there with them, and especially if there's a recess called, sitting there with the man who killed my child and is still walking the streets right now.
And fled the scene like, go keep going, sorry.
And then I was told that I would not be allowed in the courtroom if I wanted to give a victim impact statement during the trial, that I would be called to give the statement as a witness. Well, I wasn't a witness to anything except for my daughter dying in the hospital, which made no sense to me. How can you consider me a witness to anything and tell me I can't be in the courtroom? Anything that we asked, it was no. I don't understand it. The man was treated better than we were.
Paul, I saw the respect on some of the videos that he was given, and I know that officers have to do their jobs, but I would hope that the same respect to the families of the victims could be given as well. And that's what seemed that did not happen. It just seemed that way. And unless someone can show something different, this family has shown me, at least Kathy has, and I've met with David, visited with him for a good hour this morning too, but is that they're not treated the same, that the person that did the crime was treated so much better than the families were. And it just seems like the system is upside down, and we have to bring attention to that, because we need changes in our the way we handle
Is this a statewide policy, or is this specific to Washington County? And do you feel like the justice is coming from is this a political point of view in some
I
instances?
think obviously there's some political, as you know, I mean, you can't talk about these issues without politics seeming to be involved in that. And so I believe that we are Americans. Americans should go first. And if you come here the right way, we're going to help you, because we used to call it the melting pot. We talked about that coming in today, and I want David to elaborate on that, but because of what he said as well. But if you're going to be an American here, and a proud American, and your taxes are paid to take care first of us, of Americans first, we have to look at those policy changes. I think they've been ignored. I think the laws are there on the books, and they've been good. It's just that we have ignored the law. Wow. Even in Arkansas, but not just Arkansas. That's at a national level. We've finally come to a crisis in our country.
Yes.
We're finally at a crisis. But David, go ahead and speak to that.
Yes, and on top of that, my family came over here, and and they became residents and then citizens, and they gained their citizenship. And we came from California, and we lived, my mom now, due to the hard work that she's done, she's retired now and stuff, but she still works at Tyson and everything. But she's worked. She was a single mother, and and on top of that, it makes me proud. I have no shame to say she's a single mother, because it doesn't matter, what her marital status and stuff is, but the fact is that we came out of the ghetto practically, living in a trailer park and stuff, and in California, and the whole Rodney King thing. She lived through all that. We lived through all that, and then she comes in, and now she's able to have a house, and and she's well off, and then she and I'm just that financial security, and that she attained. She's really grateful for that. This country gave her the opportunity to have that. And more to elaborate on your point, Linda. What were you saying about the checks and balances in the system, about the prosecuting attorneys, about them having just about as much power as the judge? I'd like to, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is an issue, and I think that's certainly in the legislature, Paul, and you've been around this by being in the Capitol and following when laws are made and through the off seasons, but that was an issue that we've had and literally been snubbed, and just the insult that they think that we need to change the Constitution if we want to have them prosecute and basically have more fairness in the way they prosecute. They have full prosecutorial discretion. If they don't want to prosecute a case, they don't have to. And it's heartbreaking if you're the person that's the victim, or if you've been wronged. Even the state of Arkansas trying to gain funds back in audits, they many times just would not prosecute, and they had the proof they need. They just we're not going to do it. And that has to change. We have to decide how we're going to handle crime. And yes, they hear the cases, the judges do. And I think judges are the ones that if anybody's got prosecutorial discretion, it should be them. And I think that's what makes it a challenge for people and families like this, not just them, but even Americans. I mean, not just even the illegal. There was no fairness. It did not seem nothing right about that case.
Yeah.
Well, I honestly believe that we need a constitutional Bill of Rights for victims in this state.
I actually was talking with Victims' Rights Arkansas.
She's a friend of mine.
About that, I guess a couple of weeks ago.
Good.
You're right about that. Can we talk a little bit about what would be the Arkansas solution, and why didn't any legislation in this last 92nd General Assembly? Did you have some legislative goals on this, and did it not happen?
Yes, we did. And Angel Families, we had worked on some bill ideas and had been working, I myself had been talking and working a little bit with Senator Tom Cotton's office, who was trying to help the situation. And we did have a legislator who was supposed to be writing up some bills on immigration and different stuff, and she didn't do it.
They weren't filed, but we did have some success this year. Senator Stubblefield's bill, and of course in the House is where you heard most of the debate, because they had to go for round 2 in the committee to get that bill passed. But there was an anti-sanctuary state bill, and I think that was wonderful. The punishment, there has to be accountability, and to withhold tax dollars back to those communities if they decide to be partners in breaking the law, and I'm against that. And so I think that punishment should be strong. We're Americans, and we can be good and friendly and welcome people, but we have to follow our laws. They're American laws, and we need to make sure that they're enforced. And I appreciate Senator Stubblefield for going through with that bill, and of course the determination of Representative Brant Smith to follow up and continue it and not give up. And we're blessed, but yet we had a loss when we're giving our tax dollars to illegal families who are here not necessarily legally. We're giving scholarship dollars too. So, but I think that riled the people up, probably helped this other bill pass.
Yeah, I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. If you're just joining us right now, we're talking with Katherine Hall, who's an angel mom, lost her daughter Haley when an illegal immigrant driving 17 to 35 ran over her while she was on a scooter with her friend David Gutierrez. David is in studio with us. David was dragged some 2,000 feet. The driver didn't stop. Did I say illegal immigrant again? I meant illegal alien. Sorry about that, guys. Again, I guess I'm a victim.
You're getting indoctrinated.
Legal,
that's right.
Legal alien.
Political correctness.
That's right, political.
And anyway, and David tragically lost his legs while being drugged under the car, and was screaming for help. And the illegal alien fled the scene and didn't call for help either.
Didn't call for help.
And then was arrested, was set free after 2 hours, and and just wasn't treated like the criminal that he was.
He was a criminal. That's right.
And that he is.
You know what else? this really gets to me. Not only did he not have to pay restitution or do any of this, but the taxpayers paid for an interpreter to come in with him. He had security all the way around him during sentencing, and had the headphones, the whole 9 yards, like you've seen on TV a million times. It wasn't until we did the Freedom of Information Act and got the dash cams and the other stuff from the police department that when they had him in there that day that he had turned himself in, he spoke perfect English.
He did. I watched that video.
Followed the instructions. The police officers thanked him for coming in, and he spoke perfect English to him.
Wow.
And so the taxpayers paid for an interpreter to come in and do all of this.
It seems like to me, just from this story, it seems like to me that this was that if he'd have never turned himself in, I don't know if would there have been a manhunt for this guy. It doesn't seem like there would have been.
Well, actually, his picture was on the TV for the.
Now this is because you went to the press though.
That's
right?
because the effort's made.
Well, yeah, I don't know that it's the press was. I did an interview the first time and released Haley's name. She died at 1:45 in the morning, and I believe that it was one of the news stations was at my house by 6 a.m. And I did release the information. They ran him nonstop for those 2 days, and it was on the radio. His picture was on the TV, and everything else. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Washington D.C.
Okay.
Because you're trying to do. You said you're working with Senator Tom Cotton's office.
One of the things I've done in the state of Arkansas as well is teach people how to deal with the legislature, how to go, and I've continued that work. I haven't stopped doing that, and on the issue that's important to them, and I encourage them to find out what the laws are and go to their legislators and address them. And also I've introduced Kathy to Senator Cotton and Senator Bozeman, and made sure that she had the appointments to see them. We also when we went together, I attended she had me as her guest at the Angel Families Rally press conference, actually, in Washington, D.C. at our state capitol, at our nation's capital. And I can tell you that it matters getting the information out about how bad things really are with the laws not being upheld. Again, we have laws on the books if they were just enforced. And so I think going to Washington, and I'm hoping that David can do that as well, or going wherever that is. We helped work on trying to defeat a full sanctuary state bill in Colorado, calling legislators that I've talked to before in the past and built, an alliance with them on issues. And we were not successful. Colorado is a full-blown promoting themselves as a sanctuary state. Yeah. So guess what? They're opening the doors and saying, come on down. So maybe they'll leave Arkansas. And I could hope for that, because the burden, if we do not get that message out, the burden on the taxpayers and the citizens of Arkansas is unreal. We are at the top of the illegals.
That's not going to happen, first of all. Colorado, and I left Arkansas after everything happened with my daughter, and I went back to Colorado where my husband had retired from the Army after he was hit in Iraq. But the situation there is illegals are granted IDs and driver's license there in the state of Colorado with no documentation. So now what's happening is they're going to states like Colorado, California, that they can get these IDs, and they're traveling all over the U.S. And if you have a driver's license from another state, that's all you have to do is go in and transfer it to another.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that easy.
And then I can't help but think about the voting aspect of all of this.
You should.
I saw a map that was interesting, where you had the states that give illegals driver's licenses versus the states that voted for Hillary. And listen, I know some of them, that's a liberal California, everything, but some of those states, I'm thinking, the margins are a little smaller there when it comes to R&D, and I'm thinking, I wonder if that's real. And Trump really has never released the findings of the election commission that he brought together to study voter fraud or potential voter fraud. Nancy Pelosi's office. Let's talk about this. Katherine, you're an angel mom. You were part of the protest twice at Nancy Pelosi's office. Tell us.
Well, it really wasn't a protest. We went in and wanted to speak with her. We went in the first time in January, and we were told she wasn't there. There was probably about 10 or 12 of us. Nobody got out of line. It was peaceful. We just wanted to speak with her and tell her our side, since she wouldn't listen to it or speak with any of us prior. We were told she wasn't there, and as we were standing there, trying to find out when she would be there to return, somebody had walked up and said that they had an appointment, and the secretary asked, okay, who do you want to see? And she said Nancy, and she let her back. She was there. She hid behind the walls. She wouldn't come out. At that point, one of the angel moms had stated, well, of course not. She's safe behind her walls. But
Wow.
yeah, needless to say, she didn't come out. And we left, and then in February, when Linda joined me, we both went in at that point, along with some other angel families, and were pretty much told the same thing. When we left the office this time, the halls were lined with police officers. Somebody had called the police.
Intimidation.
It was, and I talked to one of the officers, and he told me, he said, he's respectfully said, Senator, I've never seen them let them film or do this in the lobby of her office. I said, no, but they're not. There's no one's done anything out of line. And he goes, I know that. And but they did have all the officers there. I think they were hoping that they would, but they didn't. They just wanted to bend her ear, just have time with the Congresswoman and the speaker, and say, this is real. We're real. We've lost our children. This is it's real. Her daughter, her son. If David could have been there, he said, I was affected. And so I think that they were respectful. They stated what they wanted to state, but they didn't do anything that was an out of line situation. The officer basically didn't know why he was called.
A lot of them at that, and they had
like
one
6.
of them had a thing. There was more than that.
Oh, was
it? One of them had a thing of zip ties, like in case they had to arrest all of us
goodness.
when we walked out, and it was, it was pretty crazy. And I'm going to tell you, there's been so many promises, even through Arkansas legislators here, that have promised to help and let's make change. And there's only been Senator Collins here that has really stuck to her word and has really shown that she does care. And Senator Tom Cotton has gone out of his way to, whenever I'm in D.C., to take the time to see me and to speak. And one of his votes, I know a lot of the people weren't real happy with, but he took the time to have somebody in his office call me and explain afterwards that it wasn't he was voting against a wall. He was voting against everything else that came with it. And, that to me showed a lot.
Yeah.
That he took the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, and I have nothing but respect, and these two legislators have really tried to help.
Yeah. Yeah, the issues can certainly get complicated.
Yes.
Up there. You know about bad stuff in legislation.
That's right.
You
That's
certainly
right.
know. Hey, David, let me ask you. You think building a wall would go a long way to stopping this?
Well, there needs to be some sort of type of filtration. I know that for a fact. Let's look at things aren't working right now. I'm gonna go a little biblical on this. The fruit or the tree shall be known by its fruit. What's the fruit of today? What's it producing? Obviously we have to take a step back and realize that we messed up somewhere along the tracks. But back in the early, colonial periods, what they had Ellis Island. They had an immigration place, like maybe we should have specific designated places where there are highly, citizens or residents, temporary residents that are looking to seek full permanent residency will be, not only just watch and to see, if we do we want this kind of citizen and permanent resident here, but not only that, but to where they're watched, but like psychiatrists have to also just look into see, and profile these characters that come into our nation.
Yeah, you have to be healthy. You have to be vetted. You have to have no disease. You have to have some sort of skill set. In Ellis Island days, you had to have a sponsor as well to get in.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, there's a way to do it, but you gotta have some form of border security. Walls. They say walls where it makes sense. I mean,
but none of it's going to make sense unless we fix our judicial system also.
Right.
Okay.
That policy.
Okay.
The locals have to also, we as a people, have to do our thing, and then get our voices heard, and and people nowadays, think that they could just because I see this a lot with my generation and stuff with the younger generation, and it's just that they you know, they want change, but they're not willing to go out and sacrifice their time and efforts to go and seek the change. Even if we're willing to, if we're trying to make some change, we have to come together as a people, and you know, just to really work with the local, and you know, just like, you know, the local and like state, and then the state with the federal, and just everybody has to come together on some common ground, and that's what we need to find, that common ground.
So when you say judicial, like, can you give me, we're running out of time here, but let's land on a policy. Like, what's the policy? What would be the number one thing that needed to change?
Well, first of all, when somebody is arrested here for a crime and they're illegal and they're released on early parole, they're not going to be paroled or monitored. Just like in this case, he has been ordered to be deported.
The man who killed your daughter.
Yes. But, you know, if this would have been an American citizen, they're monitored for years afterwards, and this isn't the case with them. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't be getting early parole releases. They're not here legally. They've committed a crime, and especially when a life has been taken. To serve 2 years in jail, you know, there's no justice to the family, and there's no watching them.
Yeah, and I think, okay, I actually think if you fix that judicial policy and then they're forced to stay in for the full term, then the burden on the taxpayer goes up, and then more people are going to be like, hey, wait a second.
But they're not going to come over here and commit the crimes, because at this point they all know they're going to get a slap on the hand and an airline ticket home.
And that's exactly
There has
right.
to be accountability, just like you do with your children. But if you've done a crime, Americans, if they're punished and they have a specific guidelines, I mean, you know, and they're willing to do their time and try to be good citizens again, we've got to enforce the policy. We have laws on the books, but we're being way too lenient, and we need to make sure that we put Americans first.
Absolutely. You agree with that,
I
Catherine?
totally
agree.
David?
You know, if there's accountability for American citizens, then anybody that is willing to reside here in this country, whether citizen or just a temporary resident, should be held accountable just the same as a citizen.
That's common sense.
You know, a couple of organizations people can look to if they want more information on numbers and things like that. It'd be Numbers USA, FAIR, FAIR.us.org, or FAIRUS.org, and the Pew report that gave the information in a study that says that Arkansas is at the top in the nation per capita of illegals.
Unbelievable.
And we're a poor state.
Yeah.
We're a welfare state.
Yeah, we're a welfare
Is that
state.
why they're coming?
We're a magnet for
We're
that
a magnet.
too. Yeah, and we're giving away free insurance too.
That's right.
Catherine Hall, really sorry for your loss. Thank you for trying to make it a positive to not let this happen to other people. David, thank you for sharing your story, because I know it's not easy as well. It's great to meet you, and Linda, it's always great to have you.
Thank you for all you do.
All right, folks, we're out of time. We're going to take a break.